I'm going to try and answer the most controversial and difficult question in TEPPEN. What is the best deck you can make? Is it even possible to answer such a question? You're probably thinking there's no way one deck can beat everything else, and you're right. There's no deck in TEPPEN at the moment that dominates to that degree, and I think that you would agree that some decks are much better than others. But what are those decks? What makes them great? Why do other decks fall short in competitive play? That's what we're going to try and answer today in my very first TEPPEN tier list. First, this tier list is just my opinion. It's based on my experiences playing the game in Champion since its release. I am not proclaiming my opinions as fact. Second, feel free to disagree. In fact, let me know what you think in the comments. Third, this tier list applies to Season 4, which is the current season for ranked play in TEPPEN. And fourth, this list won't include every possible deck, only the ones seeing some degree of play on the ranked ladder. Our list is divided into 3 tiers, 1, 2, and 3, 1 being the best of the best and 3 being the worst. We'll begin from the bottom with everybody's favorite robot, Mega Man X. The weakest deck in Season 4's meta is the green-purple charge shot deck that you see here. The pros? Plenty of seal options for shutting down enemy units, and a lot of healing and units that are built to get bigger over time. However, this deck is very slow, and you might not have enough time to build up your board. Plus, there are so many options for destroying units in other elements that even if they have high attack and high health, it doesn't really matter. Despite the problems, this is probably X's best deck right now. Slightly stronger than X is Big Resonate, or Big Reso. This can be played a couple of different ways, including Dante with Devil Trigger and Morgan with Darkness Illusion. Either way, the principle is the same. Lots of low-cost actions to buff units like Trish, Mashenko, and Ibuki to become too big to stop. The benefits are lots of answers to your opponent's cards, like halts, counters, and returning units to the EX pocket. Now, despite those pros, it requires you to draw your combo pieces in the right order and can result in some brick hands. Also, the deck has an unusual ratio of units to actions, meaning if you lose one of the few units you include, it could mean the end of the match. Rounding out Tier 3 is Yanli. I know, green has it rough. Yan is especially useful for its low cost and extra MP generation. You typically see this in mono green decks like the one you can see here, utilizing cards like Felicia to swarm the board and build them up using actions like Ascension Ceremony. It's got similar pros to the Charge Shot deck, building up beefy units to dominate in the mid to the late game, plus the utility many green cards offer like Seal and MP Boost. But it also has the same problems. It's slow to start and requires specific cards to get towards your win condition. If you don't draw the right combinations, you'll start to fall behind. Now let's move into Tier 2, where there is a noticeable improvement in consistency. At the bottom here is Spike Launch Nergigante. Yes, he was nerfed 2 seasons ago, but the hero art is still very useful. Most decks using Spike Launch will be black like the one you see here, and they include many cards that sacrifice your life points and others to heal you back up. The pros are a strong, reliable board clear from the hero art and certain black cards like Murderous Spikes, but there's also risks involved in draining your own life points. And there's not a lot of flexibility in the build. You need cards to control your life points, leaving little room for creativity. Next is Antibody activation with Jill. I want to emphasize that even though this deck is above Nergigante on the list, I believe there is a considerable gap in consistency between these two decks. Mono Red Explorer has a lot going for it in terms of card value. Nash, Guile, Carlos, Dimitri, and the legendary Jill are great examples. Plus the hero art only costs 15 AP, meaning you'll be getting lots of shields and bonus stats. Its biggest problem is being slightly less consistent than the top 4 decks. Unleashed, Nash, and other cards require you to explore a few times before they get their bonuses, so if you draw them early, that's a rough start. If you want to know more, I did a guide on this deck. The link should pop up now if you want to check it out. Now we're in Tier 1. Rounding out the bottom of this tier is Shinku Hadouken Ryu. This deck has been around since Season 1, and much of what made it good then is still played today. The deck is all about units that deal direct damage, maximizing trades to maintain your board control. It does particularly well against Morgan and Dante, but the biggest drawback is Ryu has a hard time coming back from a disadvantage in the early game. Coming up ahead of Ryu are 2 decks in particular, Dark Destruction Wesker and Ouroboros Wesker. It's difficult for me to decide which one is stronger. Dark Destruction is built a little more conservatively, relying on a lot of hard removal to keep your opponent's board clear. Ouroboros is a little more explosive, using cards like Rebirth and False Throne to put big units like Devil Joe and Tyrant in the graveyard, eventually bringing them back. Both of these decks play cards with a lot of value, especially Revenge. Both only get stronger the longer a game ends up going. The problems are few with these two. The biggest struggles you'll have are consistency in drawing your best cards and just building the decks themselves. Both require a solid amount of epics and legendaries to structure effectively, so it's pretty expensive. The second best deck in the game right now is one everyone loves to hate, Wrath Awoken Rathalos, an offense-focused deck built around a lot of attack buffs to boost Wrath Awoken, eventually giving units with combo enough power and flight to inflict some serious pain. Most builds look a lot like this, including Green's utility and Red's offensive units. It's the only hero arts in the game that scales, making it more of a threat the longer a match goes. Its only weakness is inconsistency. But don't be fooled, Rathalos is still a devastating deck, topped only by one other in the game right now. If you play ranked in TEPPEN, the top deck shouldn't be any surprise to you. Day of Nightmares gave us many new purple units that synergize well, giving a wide array of devastating effects. I'm talking about 4-cost purple. This deck can do just about anything. Stealing enemy units, bouncing them back to the EX pocket, even creating units that are unblockable. Plus, it still has room for big threats like Tigrex, the legendary Dante, and maybe Jury if you like using her. It also has defense against flyers in the form of the hero art Shadowblade, and some lifesteal. Just like I mentioned, there's a lot of benefits to using this deck, and not many drawbacks. Certain cards that depend on other 4-cost units being on the board can be detrimental if you draw them too early. It's also a little expensive to craft, but that's about it. 4-cost purple is incredibly consistent, and that's what makes it the best deck in the game during Season 4. So what did you think? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to know more about any of these decks, my good friend Iowa did a fantastic write-up on each one of them. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. Also, I've done many video guides on some of these decks, so you can go check them out here. If you want to see more TEPPEN content, be sure to subscribe and let me know what you want to see me do next. Take care. I'll see you next time.